Hey, how's it going? My name is Gareth James. Welcome back to MTT Poker School. Now, in the last few videos, I showed you how to think like a poker pro with this King 7 offsuit hand where I defended from the big blind. Today, I'm going to switch things around and look at it from the cutoffs perspective instead. Now, you don't have to have watched any of the 3 previous videos in this series to get a lot out of this one, but if you'd like to find out about the inspiration for this series of videos, then I'll leave a link up here and in the description down below. So definitely check it out if you want to find out more. So let's take a look at the spot then. It folds to me in the cutoff with around 23 big blinds, and I think I'm going to be opening a standard 20 big blind range here, since if we look at the stacks behind, we're playing roughly 20 big blinds effective against all 3 players. This was fairly early on in the tournament, well before the money bubble, so we're going to be playing pretty close to chip EV. If this was a final table though, we would be approaching this spot, very differently. From the cutoff then, we should be opening roughly 30% of hands off 20 big blinds, and that range looks something like this. So I only need to min raise in this situation because I am going to have some raise folds and I only want to be risking what's absolutely necessary. So I don't want to be going like 2.3 big blinds because every time I fold to a jam, I'm going to be losing an extra 0.3 big blinds. And over, say, 1 million hands, that's a lot of big blinds. So I should definitely fold my hand if the small blind does choose to jam. If I think that he's jamming a GTO range that looks like this, then I can call a range that looks like this. As you can see, Jack 10 suited doesn't appear in that range, and so I should definitely fold. So once again, I think we should be folding the Jack 10 suited if the big blind does choose to jam in this situation. If we think that they're jamming a somewhat sort of GTO range that looks like this, then we can call with this range of hands. As you can see, Jack 10 suited doesn't appear in that range either, and so it's definitely a fold. Okay, so I decided to min raise, and it folds to the big blind who makes the call. Given that the big blind just called here, I expect his range to look something like this. The flop comes King 7 deuce flush draw, and my opponent checks. So let's take a look at the equities then. You can see out of position has around 37% equity and in position has 63%. So in position definitely has the equity advantage here. If we click on Range Explorer, we can have a look at the sort of best hands in both players' ranges. So let's look at 2 pair plus first. You can see that the in position player, that's us, has 2.2% of our overall range as being 2 pair plus, just 8 combos, versus 2.6% or 19.7 combos for the out of position player. So the out of position player, the big blind here, slightly edges it in terms of sort of proportion of their overall range. But if we then look at over pairs and top pairs, then you'll be able to see out of position, 12.5% of their range is a top pair hand, and this is the kind of hand that would stack off fairly frequently on this kind of board at this stack depth. But if we look at in position, we have 20.8% sort of over pairs and top pairs, and overall the sort of equity is 87% versus 76. So overall our sort of top pair hands, our best top pair or over pair hands, just have more equity in this situation. So I think we can be fairly confident that this board is much better for us. So it looks like I want to mainly bet this flop for a small size. You can see he wants to bet around 82% and check the remainder. But as you can see then, there are some hands that we want to go ahead and check. So I think it's probably pretty useful for us to run through what we're doing with all the different parts of our range. So we're going to click on Strat, select None, and we're going to run through. So sets here, we are going to do some checking. So it's not just like pure betting or pure checking with either of these 2 sets. But it does look like we want to go ahead and bet more frequently than we check. But we're trying to find out where we find some checks in this range, okay? So with 2 pair, we're definitely going to go ahead and bet. Over pairs, we're definitely going to go ahead and bet. Top pairs, generally, we're just going to go ahead and bet. Very, very strong hands, get a lot of value. But as you can see, this is going to be a common theme. Whenever we're supposed to do some checking, we tend to find that those hands at the bottom of the range, so the sort of the top pairs with the weakest kickers, are going to be the kind of hands that we start checking in this spot. Obviously, you can see in the bottom right hand corner that we want to go ahead and bet king 5 of hearts more frequently because we have more equity and we just want to push that straight away. Let's have a look at under pairs. So the stronger the under pair, the more we want to check it. The weaker the under pair, the more we want to bet it. This is down to, pocket eights being, a fairly strong hand here. We can get value from 7x and 2x and flush draws, but we are somewhat vulnerable to, any 2 overcards. When it comes to queens, though, we can, be a little bit happier about checking and letting our opponent see a turn card. Second pairs then, ace 7 looks like we're going for a bet, and then 8-7 we look like we're checking more frequently. And again, this is a very, very common theme. Again, we're looking to find the hands that we're supposed to check in this situation, and it's going to be second pair with the weakest kickers. And as you can see, the weaker the kicker, the more we want to go ahead and check. Let's have a look at third pair then. Looks like pocket sixes is more of a check, but then 5s and 4s become a bit more aggressive. The same with ace deuce. Looking at ace high, a lot of betting in this situation. There is some checking. If we hover over ace queen suited, we can see that diamonds and clubs that don't have the flush draw or the backdoor flush draw, quite happy to check back, a decent amount of the time, but we're betting the hearts and the spades a lot more frequently. So we look at some other hands in this range. You can see you're just betting very frequently with these offsuit ace-x hands. I guess the common pattern here is like you can look at ace of hearts, 6 of diamonds is just checking a lot more frequently than say ace of spades, 6 of diamonds. So having that ace of hearts tends to want us to check a little bit more frequently, which is pretty interesting because I would have said that we block the nut flush draw, so it's a better bet, but clearly Pio thinks it's the opposite and we should be going for a check more frequently. Let's take a look at nothing then, and you can see there's quite a lot of betting in this spot, but the checking is really going to come from a hand like queen jack of spades that has a backdoor flush draw and backdoor straight draw. Same with queen 10 of spades, and then once it gets to like queen 9, queen 8, it's just going for the bet. So that's pretty interesting to see. We get to flush draws then, we are going to check sometimes, but most of the time we are just going to go ahead and bet and be pretty comfortable, pretty happy to get it in. Let's see if there's any sort of common themes. So like ace king and ace queen, I guess we don't mind keeping our opponent's range pretty weak going into the turn, because every time that we bet and our opponent continues, their range suddenly gets a lot stronger. So we, as I said, don't mind just keeping their range pretty weak and seeing a turn card. But yeah, pretty interesting to see top pair, top kicker with the nut flush draw is checking back a decent amount of the time here. And yeah, the best ace-x hands in this spot as well, wanting to go for a check sometimes. But it looks like the other hands are just going to be betting a lot more frequently. But yeah, a tiny amount of checking with a lot of these as well. So if we hover over Jack 10 suited, you can see that Jack 10 of hearts wants to bet very frequently. Jack 10 of spades, which is the hand that we had, wants to check a little bit of the time, around a quarter of the time. And then when we have diamonds or clubs, we want to be checking around 30% of the time. So it's pretty interesting to see that we do just push our equity when we do have the flush draw. But when we have the other combos, we want to start doing some checking. So before any betting on the flop, the SPR was around 3.7, and that's going to mean that my opponent is going to slow play their best hands a lot more frequently than raising them. I don't expect them to have sets, so the best hands that they can have in this spot is going to be hands like king 7 and king deuce. So basically, 2 pair. So if we look at the strategy breakdown here, you can see the sort of pinky ready color is raise, green is call, and blue is fold. And, just to eyeball some of the strategies here, I expect him to be raising his best king X hands here and then calling with a lot of 7x and 2x and flush draws and some backdoor flush draws as well. Let's have a look in more detail at what he's doing with different parts of his range. So as we said, there aren't any sets in our opponent's range. They're going to be jamming those pre-flop. When it comes to 2 pair, they're just going to be calling as well. Interestingly, there is some raising going on with 7 deuce suited and with some king 7 offs. They don't have any overpairs. They would have 3-bet aces pre-flop. That's an interesting thing to look at, actually, because I think some big blinds will just choose to flat aces in this situation. When it comes to top pair, then, as you can see, the better the kicker, the more likely they are to go ahead and raise, and the weaker the kicker, the more they are to just go ahead and make the call. Don't have any underpairs. Again, they would have 3-bet or jammed those pre-flop. When it comes to second pair, a lot of calling, no folding, and a tiny bit of raising with A7 suited and some of these ones down here as well. When it comes to third pair, again, just lots of calling, very little raising going on. When it comes to ace high then, interestingly, the big blind is supposed to continue with all the ace nines. The ace nine of diamonds, ace nine of clubs, the EV here is going to be pretty low. You can see the difference there. Ace nine of hearts, so the nut flush draw doing really well, and then diamonds and clubs doing pretty poorly. Spades doing a little bit better because it has the backdoor flush draw. Let's go back to strategy then. So ace eight spades, ace eight hearts continuing, diamonds and clubs probably folding. Look at ace eight off, you know, they want to have a heart in their hand to be able to call in this situation. Let's look at nothing, a lot of folding going on here, you know, bits of raising, and again, wanting to have a flush draw or a backdoor flush draw to be able to continue in this situation. When it comes to flush draws, obviously they're never folding, doing a decent amount of raising, but also, you know, a decent amount of calling as well. So yeah, pretty much a mix with the flush draws. So as we saw before, the big blind does make the call, and that's where we're going to end this video. I hope you enjoyed the analysis and got a lot out of it. I'm going to be back in a few days to look at what we're supposed to do on the turn. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button. And until next time, guys, take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.